After just a few days of letting his diss track Euphoria make its mark on the rap world, Kendrick Lamar is already back with another deadly blow to Drake. And with his latest entry in this feud, it's clear that Kendrick Lamar won't stop until he hurts Drake in a way from which he can't recover. While some rappers clearly want to do this between the skill Kendrick displays here and the ground he's unearthing as you sit with every bar here and understand how high Kendrick's level is operating, you can see that Lamar has all the power in this beef right now. Before diving into what Kendrick does in this new track, we need to take a moment and revisit Euphoria and see that through all the crazy verses and insults Kendrick threw at Drake, yes, he alluded to the fact that he was going to release consecutive diss tracks. And while this only further indicates that Euphoria is one of the best written and perfectly calculated diss tracks in hip-hop ever, it also brings us to this very moment with 616 in Los Angeles, and already by the title, just like Euphoria, Kendrick is already going at Drake here just by the song's name as he mocks his classic timestamp series Euphoria. The series premiered on 616 and 616. It's also the birthday of the legendary Tupac, who has been heavily involved in this feud between Drake using a fake version of a freestyle and Kendrick defending everything his legacy represented in Euphoria and beyond. This 616 is Father's Day, which is just another hilarious jab at Drake, and if this wasn't enough, it's also when everything with O.J. Simpson went down. So Kendrick isn't just humiliating Drake with this title, but once again, he's defending the West Coast and gearing up to end his reign as the dominant artist in the cultural center now, where Euphoria quickly escalated into a multi-layered, intense attack against Drake. Kendrick goes in a completely different direction here, as this cut only features one instrument and isn't intense or direct at all, and in fact, the beat is actually quite beautiful as it features a smooth soul loop from the one and only Al Green. And with Kendrick's bars layered over a beat like this, it gives the whole track a completely different atmosphere. And when we look at the song's production, there are even more layers beyond its sound because Drake's uncle actually played guitar for Al Green. And on top of this, it's worth noting that the guys behind the beat are one of Kendrick's producers, Soundwave, but more significantly, Jack Antonoff, known for working with Taylor Swift. And again, by using a beat made by someone so synonymous with Taylor Swift, this only adds another layer to things, as it harks back to everything Drake said about the custom-made freestyle. So with all this laid out, which already shows that every move Kendrick is making in this feud is intentional and done in a way to keep leveling up over Drake, when Kendrick starts rapping on this track, we have the pleasure of seeing him simply spit straight bars over this unique instrumental, and not just a few bars, but of course, more lines that are aimed at Drake. But just like the sound of the song itself, Kendrick adopts a different approach on every angle of his own performance. Now, when Kendrick kicks off this track, he's not immediately firing shots at Drake, but he's focusing on the issue from his own perspective, and I think it's brilliant because while Kendrick talks about how his personal life is unaffected by this and that he's still at peace as a human being, he separates a part of himself from all of this. And whereas Drake is constantly trolling and posting about what's happening in this beef, this seemingly shows the difference in their personalities once again, as Kendrick simply positions himself as an individual who is much more mature, while Drake seems to be growing more. Because Kendrick alludes to the positive state he's in doesn't mean he's not a mess, because right after the opening bars, Kendrick still tells us to wonder who he is even if he didn't go to battle against Drake. And from here the West Coast King simply cooks, with straight bars and a super focused demeanor, starts to approach Drake with a completely new strategy that's not just telling us things we already know about him and simply flipping it in a way that makes him look like an absolute clown, but it's to reveal to the public new things about Drake and his camp that are trying to tear him apart from the inside. The interesting part is that Kendrick is embracing many of the threats Drake made and the games he tried to play and throwing them back at him, as both in disses and custom-made freestyles he was trying to separate Kendrick from his own label Top Dog Entertainment and from members like CZA and beyond this from the West Coast as a whole, but this clearly didn't affect Kendrick as he already settled the score in all of this in Euphoria. But now he's on the offensive exactly the same way here. Kendrick takes many of the claims about what's happening behind the scenes in this. Kendrick frames all of this in a super effective and impactful way when he calls Drake a liar and a horrible person and talks about how he's involved the wrong people in this beef, just to say something like he specifically defends Anthony Tiffith, the CEO of Top Dog, and also Cash, who was the manager of the Weeknd's whom Drake despised in the disses, and from here after pulling out all the people who apparently have nothing to do with any of this beef other than distracting Drake. going full throttle against Kendrick Lamar, comes at him with another power move when he reveals that his own team and his label OVO might be working against him, and that due to the way Drake acts and treats the people around him, the people he calls his family actively despise him and provide information to his biggest rivals, as deep down they want to see Drake fail as much as other people do now. This is a ludicrous claim, and while this is nothing new, as guys like Pusha T and The Weeknd have alluded to this, because someone like Push specifically said he found out that Drake was hiding a child no less than with Drake's closest collaborator 40, as many people, including Drake himself, suspected that Kanye told Push about this and he was using 40 as a cover-up. As already knew this, none of these claims could be proven, but now that Kendrick attacks Drake with the same angle, it seems that the truth about the disaster that is OVO is finally coming with full force, and after The Weeknd simply saying about how OVO has leaks in its operation in the Metro Boomin and Future track for me, it seems like everything is finally coming together as Kendrick puts together the final pieces of the puzzle once and for all. Now Kendrick doesn't stop here as he continues to reveal more and more about Drake, as he apparently confirms that Drake paid people to dig up dirt on him, and all he did by doing this was lose money, as Kendrick's skeletons were already laid bare in Mr. Moral. And on top of that, Lamar says himself, "Sorry that I live a boring life. I love peace, but of course, in the next bar, let's make Drake know that he will still go to war with him and destroy everything he represents now," bringing all this momentum to an incredible conclusion. Kendrick takes both angles and wraps them together to continue trampling everything Drake represents, while explaining that he's not the smart leader he thinks he is, and that all attempts to spread misinformation through false reports, and as Kendrick confirms, actual automated bots in social media comment sections have not only worked against him, but at this point, he really needs to worry about what's happening in his own camp, as Kendrick says that one of the biggest leakers is right by his side and two more are tired of his lifestyle. And while we don't know who Kendrick is specifically talking about, we can assume that one of these supposed leakers has to be 40 and that another one definitely is Beam, who allegedly is one of Drake's ghostwriters, and as Kendrick called him out by name with Euphoria, it seems like maybe he knows something about him specifically that will come true if Drake decides to continue with this beef. Now closing out this track, Kendrick discusses how Drake is playing dirty. He can no longer hide behind his phone and memes, and it's time to think about who he really surrounds himself with, as he leaves you with the line, "Before you realize that you are not alone," asking what would Mike do, which is a crazy way to end this track, as once again Kendrick has alluded to this connection of Drake being Michael Jackson. As we can see now, he really pushed Drake to play, as he is helping him here, but beyond just referencing MJ's iconic line, he is also talking about the fact that Michael Jackson had serious trust issues with everyone around him at one point in his career. So when we look at 616 in Los Angeles in the grand scheme of this feud, I think this was another great move for Kendrick, as it perfectly complements Euphoria. As with the first track, it almost seemed like an overview of everything that's wrong with Drake and why this feud. It's at this point in the first place where it seems like Kendrick is analyzing Drake's strategy itself, and now he's presenting a completely new set of cards, not only to give himself an advantage, but also to confuse Drake and make him question how he's handling his own strategy. Operation However You Want to Compose This. Kendrick Lamar definitely scores another point with this track, and with two phenomenal tracks offering us something so different both musically and narratively crucial to the feud. I don't know what Drake is going to say in response, because if everything Kendrick is saying is true when this feud is over, I don't know how Drake is going to come out of this being the same man. So let me know your thoughts on 616 in Los Angeles and who you think is winning the overall prize right now. Subscribe if you think Drake's career is dead. See you soon, my legend.